What's up everyone, and welcome to another episode where we're going to discuss a mole spamming campaign called SquirrelWaffle. I know chicken and waffles, but squirrel and waffles? There's no way I'm eating that. Considering what this SquirrelWaffle mole spam campaign could do, I really don't want to get anywhere near that either. If you remember a few episodes ago, we talked about people having incriminating evidence put on their machines in the hopes that they would get caught and go to prison. Now that scenario is kind of extreme for like what can happen with this mole spam campaign, but we also covered in another episode the red line Trojan that can steal your browser data, including credit card details, cryptocurrency credentials, and a ton more. Now if you missed the episode on people being set up to go to prison and you want to watch it, the link to that episode is here above. And if you want to check out the episode on the red line stealer, that link is here. The SquirrelWaffle Malspam or mole spam campaign is harder to detect because it hijacks email threads to increase the likelihood of you clicking on the malicious link in it, which, again, can lead to things like redline Trojan or worse. Additionally, SquirrelWaffle now coaxes you into continuing your talk in another room, so to say. Really, they just use a type squatting domain to like host a mail server that looks like your same domain, and then you move the conversation over there. Now, I hope you'll watch the full episode, but in case you already know the story, you can now skip directly to my insights at the end of this episode, right from the timeline below. For the rest of you, let's go through the story together and see what we can learn to protect ourselves and others.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
Just to get it out of the way in terms of what it is, SquirrelWaffle is a malware loader that is distributed as a malicious Office document in spam campaigns. It provides attackers with an initial foothold in a victim's environment and a channel to deliver and infect systems with other malware. SquirrelWaffle attackers now use typosquatting to keep sending spam even after Exchange servers are patched for proxy logon or proxy shell. The SquirrelWaffle campaign can hijack an email thread to increase the chances that a victim will click on malicious links. Those rigged links are tucked into an email reply, similar to how the virulent Emotet malware, which typically spreads via malicious emails or text messages, has also operated. But this time, the operators added a twist. They sucked knowledge out of an email thread and used it to trick the target into a money transfer. In a Tuesday post, Sophos analysts Matthew Everts and Stephen McNally said that typically in a SquirrelWaffle attack, which entail the threat actors walking through holes left by unpatched notorious off-picked apart proxy login or proxy shell exchange server vulnerabilities, the attack ends with those holes finally getting patched, removing the attacker's ability to send emails through the actual server. So they get booted from the exchange server, but they've already planted the next phase of their attack. In this recent engagement, the Sophos Rapid Response team found that while a SquirrelWaffle mole spam campaign was wreaking havoc on an unpatched server, that same vulnerable server was being used by the attackers to siphon off knowledge from a stolen email thread and to launch a financial fraud attack. Congratulations, you're doing a great job by wanting to learn about the SquirrelWaffle mole spam campaign and by watching my episode about it. I appreciate your support. If you are new to my channel and you haven't done yet, please consider subscribing to my channel and smashing the bell to be notified when I upload new episodes where I give you insights into the newest important cybersecurity news stories like this one. With my insights, you can be better prepared to protect your company, your family, and yourself against these and other cyber attacks. So hit the subscribe button now and let's continue to learn about this story together. Combination of SquirrelWaffle, proxy logon, and proxy shell has been encountered by the Sophos Rapid Response team multiple times in the last few months, but this is the first time that they've seen attackers use typo squatting to maintain the ability to send spam once the Exchange server has actually been patched. In this case, patching Exchange wouldn't have clipped SquirrelWaffle's tail, the analyst said, given that the attackers had already spirited away an email thread about customer payments from the victim's exchange. The double-up attack on the vulnerable Exchange server started with the attackers registering a typosquat domain. In other words, they registered a domain name that resembled the victim's legitimate domain, but with a small typo. Like, think Google versus Gargle. Then they used email addresses from the lookalike domain, Gargle, to reply to the email thread. Moving the conversation out of the victim's email infrastructure gave the attackers operational control over what happened next, Everett and McNally explained. Sophos offered advice on how to protect against malicious email attacks such as the SquirrelWaffle campaign. The single biggest step defenders can take to prevent the compromise and abuse of on-premise Microsoft Exchange servers is to ensure that they have been patched with the most recent updates from Microsoft. Sophos also provided tips on what to do if your organization has already been attacked. In fact, it's put together a SquirrelWaffle incident guide to help victims investigate, analyze, and respond. So, in order to make it easier for other organizations to figure out if emails are legitimate, you definitely want to try to implement industry standards for email authentication, such as SPF records or DKIM, DMARC. Using these standards can make it harder for an attacker to send spoofed emails impersonating your domain. So, what can we learn? SquirrelWaffle emerged, or was at least first discovered, in September 2021. That's only 6 months ago. They have been seen successfully deploying Cobalt Strike and QuakeBot or CakeBot, and they've evolved to use this new fraud tactic all in a grand total of 6 months. Now we know that SquirrelWaffle can spread through spam or Malspamming campaigns, but is generally through an already infected or vulnerable Microsoft Exchange server. The Microsoft Exchange exploitation gives the SquirrelWaffle group access to a mail server. Using the hijacked mail server, the group is then able to jump into mail threads or different conversations, both internal conversations and external conversations. They can add a malicious link to a reply to person A in said conversation, like a colleague in a different department, and then they could send it off. Now the colleague, seeing the mail is coming from you and believes it's from you, clicks on the link. I don't know, maybe, it's some funniest cat memes that you're sending in some conversation, or since the attackers know the exact context of the email thread, maybe it's something serious like, check out this new Project X important new requirement from the CEO. It's a Word document. I put it in Teams or on OneDrive. With that context, and knowing or believing the email is coming from you, the recipient is much more apt to fall for it. The email spam comes with that link to a malicious document. That document has a malicious macro which leverages a C script process to extract an embedded VB script file and basically save it to your hard disk drive, and then execute that VB script with a W script process. The VB script that gets executed is nothing more than a PowerShell command that then downloads the SquirrelWaffle payload from a series of 5 locations. At least it was 5 locations when they did the initial examination of this malware. Now SquirrelWaffle is then executed using a rundl32 process, and it tries to install Cobalt Strike and do everything else, including trying to take over the world. Now this new method does take a different turn, or give it an additional aspect. In addition to, say, still trying to infect everyone in the company and take over the world, these guys are buying a similar domain to yours, say the gargle.com instead of google.com. They set up an email address on that new domain, and then they hijack very targeted conversations. These targeted conversations are all about money. So, say an invoice comes from a supplier, like a marketing agency or a dev agency or whatever. The attackers can inject or hijack that conversation by sending a reply from their new gargle.com domain. The email or the employee who gets that mail responds to that gargle.com email, and now the attacker is in sort of complete control of the conversation. They've moved it over to gargle.com. Now, with that control, they can say something like, I don't know, we just changed banks, so if you could please use this information to pay the invoice, it would be great. Thanks. So the employee falls for it and ultimately wires whatever payment it is owed to agency A to some bank in Shenzhen, China. So now we know all that, right? Great. All that info points to a few important things. Number 1, patch your software. Number 2, educate your team or your family about how to spot these attacks. Have them always sort of check the email address of the sender. Make it a ritual, just to make sure it's still your colleague or your partner or your friend or your father and not some stranger about to try to rip you off. Anytime finances are involved, every one of us should be on high alert to check twice what's going on and who's asking and what am I supposed to do and am I really supposed to be doing this. Number 3, walk your digital perimeter and make sure none of your traps have been sprung or that your fences or defenses are all still intact. With that, I say thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.